In this video, you're going to learn how to mix your tech house, kick and bass like a pro. It's a super simple guide and literally the last tutorial that you will ever need on mixing your low end, because we're going to cover everything step by step. Let me show you the track that we're going to be working on today. So this is how it sounds. Alright, so this is the track that I played on one of my latest DJ sets and something that I'm producing for myself. So this is why I decided to pick this one, because it's not like a tutorial project. It's literally something that I made for myself. And that's going to be pretty cool to break down everything for you. And for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Vlad and I create superstar music producers. And if you're interested in music coaching and you want to work on your production, mixing, sound design skills, all the links are down below. Feel free to book a call with me or send me a message on Instagram. And without further talking, let's get straight into the video. So I prepared a little presentation for you to have some nice visuals, because it's easier to understand this way, and for me it's also more fun to explain something visually. Okay, so let's start with the thing number one, and it's going to be the sound selection, and then I'm going to play everything for you in the project. Okay, so the most important thing when you are making your mixing and making your kick, bass, in tech house, any other genre, is sample selection. So many times I saw bad samples in the projects that I've been working on, like mixing for clients and so on, that I had to just make a new kick from scratch. And this illustration, this diagram really illustrates so well that I don't even need to add anything on top of that. So like a good kick, it will just fit the mix perfectly. It will fit the kick, the bass, the drums, the instruments. And with a bad kick, you can shape it, right? You can change that a bit. But then again, even if you fit it in the mix, it's still not going to be as good as the kick that sounds good from the beginning. So if we go back to the project and we remove all of the processing, right? Like, I'm not going to apply anything besides sidechain, and you're still going to hear that everything is actually sounding nice. So, okay, there's literally nothing on my kick and the bass besides the EQ, because that's necessary. So, no like at all. Right? So it's already sounding good. Like without any processing, I could just leave it as it is and it would sound nice. But there are still a couple of things that we can do, right? And then if I pick like the wrong kick, let me just quickly add another one here. And I'm going to show you that bad kick is literally going to ruin your low end. So let's say, I don't know, like this one, right? Just for the sake of this example. This one is not really that bad. So maybe... Okay, let's take this one. Right, so it doesn't really sound that nice, right? And without the EQ, even if we rebalance, really, I mean, not that good. Not that good, and that's what I'm trying to say. That so it's much better to spend some extra time, even make your own kick from scratch, in a synthesizer like Kick 2, really good VST, because it's going to make the process so much easier for you. It's going to be really, really easy. Okay, so that's the thing number one. So having the right kick sample. Okay, let's talk about the next thing, and this is something that still a lot of people don't understand. I think maybe on the internet, not a lot of people talk about this specific thing like in the right way. But basically, this concept is really, really simple. In the mix, we have a finite amount, like limited amount of space that we can use. And this is how your kick, bass, low end, and literally whole mix should look like, right? So you have the kick, we have the bass. And quite often what happens is people have this long kick and they still have like pretty long bass. And that's going to create some issues for your low end. You don't want to have that, you don't want to keep that. So it's either going to be something like this, like long bass, short kick, or the other way around, like this. So something like that, right? That's the thing to understand, and it's really, really simple. Again, if we go back and I'm going to do like, so my kick is now perfectly set to like the right length, everything is good. But if I make it really long, and we try to listen to that, let's say in just the low frequencies on the master, so I'm putting a filter. That's a really nice way to check if your frequencies sound good. Right, so the kick is taking so much space that you can't hear the bass, but this way, you can hear the kick, you can hear the bass. So just eating up all of the space. And the same thing is gonna happen if you make your bass synth too long. Let's say if we do like, I mean, you can still hear the kick because we have some sidechain, but yeah, that's again two most important concepts: the sample selection and the length of the elements. Because if you mess up with these, it's just not going to sound really that good. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now let's talk about the next thing, and then that's going to be the EQ. And from this moment, we are going to start looking at the processing that I did on both like the kick and the bass elements. Okay, so let's start with that, and I'm gonna solo. I think the bass should be just a bit longer, like this. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so now when we look at the kick, this is how the original sound was from the beginning. It sounds like this. So I don't like this click sound, and it just literally destroys the kick sound for me. So I'm just gonna roll off the high frequencies and have like nice deep and thumpy kick. And as you can see, we are also removing the quite a lot of like headroom here. Like, I mean, the loudness. We are saving headroom here, right? Like this. So now the kick and the bass are perfectly balanced in terms of the loudness. So usually when it comes to setting the loudness, it's like plus 6 dB for the kick. But then again, depending on the genre, can be different. So just always trust your ears, how loud the kick and the bass should be in your track. And don't forget to use some reference for that. Okay, so that what about the EQ on the kick, right? So the purpose of the EQ is we just rebalance the frequencies, right? So if we have like, let's say like those 3 problematic frequencies, with the EQ, we can just rebalance them really easily. And the same thing is going to happen if we are lacking some frequencies, we can boost them. So I cut frequencies on the kick drum and I boosted frequencies on my bass, and you're going to see that. Okay, so let's go to the bass section, and I'm going to show you what I did to my bass. Okay, so this is the SSL kind of EQ. So what I did here, I boosted 120 at about 0.6 dB. I boosted 300 Hertz at about 1.7, and I boosted 600 at about 2.7. Okay, let's listen in solo. So it's making the bass a little bit more like balanced, mid-focused, right? So something like this. And then depending on the sound that you want to get for your track, you can either boost or you can cut the frequencies. Again, I use 2 of these principles basically, right? So for the kick, I didn't need those frequencies. And for the bass, I decided that no, I actually want to have some of those like low mids, low frequencies, and a bit of mids. Before we go to the next section, a really important thing here to talk about is going to be the sidechain. And in this example, I'm using LFO tool, and I'm a huge fan of like really obvious like ducking effect, because if I bypass the sidechain here, this is how the bass sounds on its own. And right, so we can either apply the sidechain to the whole thing, or we could split the band. It really depends on how you want your track to sound. So sometimes I do split, but then again, It's up to you. Okay, the next thing that I'm using for the sidechain is going to be the smooth operator. So this is basically like a Soothe 2, like a spectral resonance suppressor. And I'm using this one as a sidechain because there's one cool trick that you can do in Pro Q3. So if you use Pro Q3 on the kick and the bass, and you go here, it's showing you what channels you're using, and the red one is showing the kick. And this is where the frequencies overlap. So usually, in most cases, this kind of sidechain is more than enough. But if you want to make it even cleaner, or like you feel that it's a little bit too muddy, then you can apply something like Soothe 2, Smooth Operator, something like this. And as you can see, the kick is ducking a bit here, right? Not a lot, not too much, but just enough to basically fix this area. So just a bit, I'm not doing too much, right? So that's for the sidechain when it comes to that. Okay, now let's talk about the next thing, and this is going to be the saturation. So this is like a really basic example. This is the sine wave without any saturation. And with saturation, we are basically, as you can see here, we are adding harmonics, right? Those harmonics. And when you do this thing on your kick, the bass, like literally any sound, it's going to create more power. And also saturation works like compression. So it basically reduces the dynamic range. So when you work with like drums, the bass, it's going to be fatter, like more powerful. And also it's going to have like less of that dynamic range. So let's take a look at the saturation that I did on the bass channel. So for that, I'm using Tube Saturator. I think, yeah, Tube Saturate is the name of this plugin. So if we take a look, just take a look at the loudness here. So we are peaking about like 6 dB here, right? So that's like the peaks. And if we saturate like a lot, just to show you this example, wait, need to turn this on. Right, so we're basically like reducing the dynamic range here. Might not be like really that obvious, but basically it affects the dynamic range. So when you apply saturation, you're going to see that, especially like on drums and those kind of like percussive sounds. So just a bit of saturation, to give a bit of that character. So about 50% is fine, right? Like this. And I'm sure you hear that we brought up the low frequencies here as well, right? So it became more powerful in the low frequency. So that's with, that's without. So less powerful, okay? And then after the saturation, I am applying some EQ here. You could do that before, you could do that like after. Again, it's going to depend on the sound, but usually the logic is like that. First, I have like the digital EQ, which is really precise, right? So I might, maybe I can cut here. And then, so I'm filtering the frequencies that I don't want to get into the saturator plugin. And then after that, I'm boosting the frequencies with the EQ again. But in this case, I decided that I don't need any extra like cuts or something like that, because it just sounds good. If it sounds good, it sounds good. Like, and quite often I'm not even like doing a lot of EQing to my like kick and the bass, because I just realized with experience that this is something that you don't need that much. Okay, so for the EQ, yeah, sounds like this. You could maybe cut if you'd like to, and it's gonna create like nice and deep sound. I like it a lot. So this is more like mid-focused kind of sound, like this. All right, so that's pretty cool. So again, gonna be up to you how you decide. The next thing that I want to talk about is going to be the compression. So compression, we are smooth the dynamics. It looks sort of similar to the EQ, because essentially it's like really similar with the frequencies, because like with the equalizer you can also affect the dynamics of the sound. But let's say like we have this like bass sound, and depending on the notes, its dynamics are really different, right? So with the compressor, we are applying the compressor, and it's going to look something like that. So we went from this like unbalanced kind of like dynamics to more something like this. Okay, so I'm gonna show you the compressor on this bass. I have two compressors, which is like a pretty nice technique. So the first one is really fast. It's VCA and Opto compressor from Analog Obsession. By the way, like really recommend the plugins are really great. So fast attack, fast release to catch the transients and smooth it a bit. The ratio is about like 6:1 because it's a bass. I want to compress it a lot. Okay, that's without. And we need a bit of makeup here. Yeah, about 0.7. Right, so it's, I don't know if you can hear like the same way as I do, but it really makes the bass flat, sort of like on one level. And after that, I am applying this, it's LA2A, which is the, I think, the Opto compressor. Yeah, again. So this is really good emulation from Universal Audio. And what I'm doing here, again, it's in limit mode. It's also giving a bit of saturation, which is pretty nice on the bass, right, as you can hear. So again, like additional saturation, additional color. And again, we're just smoothing the dynamics, okay? And yeah, the last thing could be like the EQ. Again, if you want to shape the bass a bit more, let's say maybe like this, but then again, I'm not sure about that. Like in this example, I feel like the bass is just sounding good and I don't need any extra EQ on my bass line. So that's all good. So as you can see, the processing chain is like so simple, but it just sounds good, right? Like nothing additional, nothing that, you know, extraordinary, something that you won't use. And the final thing is going to be the routing. So how do you route this? How do you do the group processing? It's going to be really simple. So I route my kick, bass, and all like low frequency sounds into one group. And then on top of that, I'm just applying some compression, saturation, EQ, and so on. So you first apply the processing to the kick, bass, like individual channels when you need. And then after that, we are using the same thing on the group, right? So let's listen to what we've got so far. Let's apply compression on the kick and a bit of pull tick. This is like the cool analog EQ. I like it a lot. Something like this, right? And then the final step is going to be the group processing. And one of my favorite, like all-time favorite things to do on kick and the bass group is going to be saturation. It's like, I use it a lot. So just listen to how it sounds. So that's with saturation. I know it's louder, but like I'm just too lazy to compensate for the loudness, but it's really like giving a lot of power. It's like gluing the bass. It makes the low frequencies really like stick out. I also just brings everything on top. And then you can play with the bands. Maybe you want to do something more like just the low frequencies. But in this case, I listened in it like in the whole mix, like with the drums. So let me go back and do like. Okay, so that's usually the thing that I'm doing like all the time, and it works perfectly because that's the thing that you would need for like the kick and the bass. Okay, and now a bit of ninja mixing techniques. So one of the things that I really like is applying a bit of multi-band compression on like the like really low frequencies with a ratio of like 4:1 is fine. Short attack, short release, and it just makes the low frequencies more balanced when you compress them afterwards. So if you do like, right, so it just makes it slightly more balanced, and after that, when you're using compression, it just sounds really, really nice, and I like that. And what's cool about multi-band compression is that you can also use it on individual channels. So like if you have some problematic like areas on your kick, on your bass, you just do the same, right? So you select the area where you want to focus. Maybe like, again, if your bass has like, this is the problematic like area, right? You just compress it with a multi-band compressor, just with one band, and it just gonna sound really, really good, okay? So that's the principle. And then there's the final compressor with a pretty like long attack, pretty long release to really glue everything together. And this is how the group sounds with all of the processing, like this. So group processing is doing quite a lot, right? Like this. And before we end, one thing that I want to show you is the group processing itself, like group processing alone, is gonna do so much to the sounds, right? So just check this out. No like individual channel processing. It's already like sounding great. I would say that it could work even without this like processing on the bass. I just decided that I want to have a bit more color. And then again, it's like why it's important to understand your tools. Right, pretty cool. But even without that, like with saturation, with a bit of compression here and here, like everything is sounding so good. And as you can see, it's just really, really simple. You just need to like understand the concepts that we talked about, and then like the mixing becomes super easy. Okay, so that was it for this tutorial. And yeah, after that, after applying the concepts that I covered in this video, you're going to be able to mix your kick and the bass like a pro, because as I said, it covers everything. So as always, thanks for watching. If you need coaching, all the links are down below, and I see you in the next video.